Recording.
Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Okay, calling the City of Torrington Conservation Commission to order for October 19th, 2023. Present is Aaron Stelma, Karen Svets, Stephen Ivane, myself, Christine Altman, staff member Nate Nardi Cyrus, and George Craig as a guest. First order of business is approval of the September 21, 2023 minutes. Do we have a motion to approve them?
I will motion to approve.
Okay, and a second? All right, all in favor? I abstain, motion carries. Okay, new business. We need to elect a vice chair.
Something that came up at the last meeting. I think you're the only officer that we have right now.
mhm.
We can elect a secretary as well. I'm
We've
fine
never done
continuing
that,
being
yeah.
the secretary, but it's a
Yeah.
kind of a succession thing.
Mhm,
We
Say
have-
again? Have we ever had a vice chair for, not for, no,
think
in
Tom
wetlands,
was.
yes, but really?
I think Tom K was. And then we just never replaced him after he left.
Tom Kalinowski?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
okay. Anybody want to be vice chair?
I'm still too new. I feel too new.
You ran the meeting last time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You
okay,
can do it. Great job.
Okay.
yeah, all right,
Nominate
so,
Stephen Ivane.
Okay.
I'll second that.
all right.
There we go.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. All right, Steve Ivane is our vice chair. Okay, the next order of business is landscaping zoning regulation amendment.
Okay, I didn't have a copy of this to put on there. I did circulate it to everyone.
Mhm.
This was something that Karen had brought to us, just the idea of potentially modifying our landscaping regulation in our zoning code to require native species be planted. It's a great idea. I pretty much required applicants as best I can. They can always push back, no one ever
Mhm.
does, but they could theoretically. This would kind of tie them more to, especially if I'm not around or something,
Yeah.
future, it would be part of the code.
Yep.
What was I gonna say about that? I did update other sections, really mostly everything else that you see in yellow that I highlighted here, and you can take a look at this. Just the kind of whereas clause type things, like the purpose,
Mhm.
adding things like reducing the urban heat island effect, providing shade, noise, and static, just kind of updating the purposes behind this. That's what I was going to say.
Mhm.
So this is targeted, Christine brought this up, I don't know if it was public to everyone, that this regulation is only targeted to
Yeah, it was just
commercial
to you.
development. So it's not, like, a single family home is not required to have landscaping. If you look at this, the major thing is that for every 40 feet, there needs to be 1 tree and 5 shrubs. That's what we generally hold them to. Somewhere in here, I don't remember exactly where, it's considered, it gives it flexibility. Here it is. With greater flexibility in the layout. So it's not, there's kind of like an escape clause for this where we have that initial 1 tree, 5 shrubs for 40 feet, but we can horse trade and, we usually kind of work with applicants, especially if they want to, showcase a part of their building, but they want to add more shrubs to like a different street or more trees, we kind of can work with them that way. But once they arrive at a plan, it's enforceable as their site plan, and so there's no flexibility after everything is.
Do they have an option to not do any landscaping at all?
Commercial?
For commercial, no, they have to, this is, and it's specific to the frontage,
So they can't just like have lawn as well?
correct, for the frontage, for like in front of they're facing the right of way. There's a requirement of landscaping there.
So now where they're building a gas station where Scarpelli's, this gas station they've been building for 3 years. Now they'll have to put shrubbery and trees up in the front there.
I'm not sure. I haven't actually reviewed their landscaping plan. I mean, I'll be enforcing it. They've taken so long that we've been really just working with them for soil and erosion control, but presumably they have something up there that I'll have to look at and enforce, but I'm not sure if they kind of negotiated out a different way to do the landscaping. Like I said, because it's flexible, it can come out in a lot of different ways. So technically, we could be flexible on species choices too, but I think the more that we talk about a requirement for native plants in this, just the better it is. Most applicants will just
Be
do what
fine,
they
yep.
do what they say, you know,
Yeah.
and it's more like we really have a compelling reason why this doesn't work. Not like, you know, we're not giving a lot of allowances out.
It might be a stupid question, but what is the definition of a commercial property? Would a farm stand constitute as a commercial property?
I believe when I reviewed the landscaping for farm stands in the past, you're allowed to use existing trees as, you know.
Part of that
reflective of it. And
landscaping.
because it's flexible, you can say, okay, well, this one may not be within 10 feet of the street, but it's, you know, 15 feet or something.
So then my next question is, are there any size guidelines that go with this? Like you
Yes.
have to be a business or a lot size of
Oh.
X or
No,
bigger.
no,
So if you're a small farm stand,
yes.
not a whole lot of frontage and acreage and stuff, is that specifically called out in there?
No, it would just be a commercial enterprise, so.
Because my only concern with adding more requirements on top of businesses is you're scaring away small businesses from coming in, because like going through the farm stand process,
Right.
there's so many little extra add-ons for my little $200 a year stand. I have to pave things and
Right,
put gravel pads, and I mean, even beyond the requirements, we have to put more parking spaces than are required and whatnot. And then you slap on, we have to do certain specific landscaping. The cost becomes
right.
Prohibitive.
very prohibitive.
So, I mean, that's a good point. So with this regulation, first of all, what we're proposing wouldn't really
not
change.
changing the
much, because
regulation.
They would
All-
still be required to have, they could be required to have those trees. The difference between getting a native tree and a non-native tree.
Is there
isn't
any
gonna be
way of
really
adding a
lot
minimum limit to like maybe a lot size? A lot size and bigger.
For
I mean,
landscaping?
For commercial. For the landscaping required.
I mean, I feel like,
I just feel like,
and
I feel like we're scaring away people that are trying to start off small
Right.
to actually grow into doing anything.
Well, and another kind of differentiation here is that, like, let's say you're a small business, you're moving into an existing unit. There's no requirement to update if you're not doing any changes to the site. So let's say you buy like a small frontage on East Main Street, it's a paved all the way to the edge of the road. No one is gonna make them rip everything up. They may not even need to get any kind of approval if they're not changing the use. If they are changing the use, it's a really, really minimal amount of approval, but there wouldn't be any requirements for the site. Unless they're already investing in site work. So if they're gonna, let's say, expand the parking
Put a
lot
parking lot, yeah, that's what happened to my mom.
in a huge amount of area, then
Yep.
they're gonna be required to do other things.
Yeah, so she had like a property that was set up as 2 multifamily residential, but it was in a zone in which she could do business, so she converted the first floor of one of the buildings to her office and had to, put in a parking lot, and at that point, she had to do a landscaping plan. The trees were already there, she just had to add shrubs.
I think I know exactly what you're
Because it was parking lot development, not the house development, but she was developing the parking lot.
Yeah, she just had, she was gonna expand the parking lot, she was gonna make more spaces, and she, and she had to have, the driveway had been there forever, but the sight lines weren't good, so she had to negotiate with a neighbor to get, the shrub cut down for sight line, not cut down, but trimmed lower for sight line, and there were just a bunch of things, but it was only kicked in because she was already putting a substantial amount of money into that thing.
Right.
And it was a matter of trimming a hedge and, and 5 shrubs.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean,
on
I'm
the
not, I'm
front,
not,
it wasn't
I'm not
really-
concerned about my
wasn't really-
specific,
No, I know what
but
you're
I'm
saying.
using it as
exactly.
a hypothetical. Because, I mean, while we might be crazy enough to do what we're doing and investing in something that's not gonna return anything. I just don't wanna prohibit other people, and I think that,
Well, what
That's
would the,
kind of our
what would
long-term
be
goal is-
prohibitive about switching out barberry for blueberry? Like this, that's what this amounts to, is like, instead of burning bush, you would be, like, the things that people put in are burning bush, barberry,
I don't even know if you can put a barberry anymore. I think
really?
Is it
I
prohibited
thought
here?
that, are you,
Maybe it's not. I might
no,
be
are you
thinking-
kidding me? I wish it
No,
was.
Maybe it's not.
I wish
New
it
York
was.
State, there's a prohibition.
I
They do that.
really, I mean, it's one of
Yeah.
the things that really sticks in my craw is that, you do this work, like even, I pull out the non-natives, the invasive species out of my property, and then my neighbor goes and plants exactly what I just ripped out, and they're like, and barberry is generally the thing, like, but like, what are some, I mean, there's like a certain list of plants that are super invasive. They're at all of the nurseries, the local nurseries, and they have as of right, they can sell them, we can't. And anybody, residential can plant them, but it does have a major impact, and it gets into our wooded areas, the edges of the woods, and,
Is there
It-
anything we could do to limit the sale of invasives?
we can't.
That would be a state. Like I was saying,
State
in New
level.
York State, there's a prohibited list. And the
Mm-hmm.
nurseries they can like, I was there and I think this came out like around 2020 or 2019. They could exhaust their stock but they couldn't bring in new material. But it was a huge effort, and then you have to regulate that. And
Right, it's gotta be a
inspect it,
state law.
They had to kind of have the authority to go
And
in.
you know that
do
all the
that.
nurseries are gonna push back on that. I mean, there's a reason that those things are popular.
so is there any opportunity then for us to say, recommend, or contract, with local nurseries that can offer the plants that we're recommending at some kind of discounted or decent price? Because we're able to negotiate that since we're adding in a requirement
But
to kind of send these people to them.
Well, they could go right to the Northwest Conservation District's annual sale.
I don't think they could do that.
They can't?
Well,
Oh,
because
because
they have to be
bigger?
the size
Oh, I see.
requirements. 2.5-inch caliper is pretty large, right? That's like.
That's right, yeah.
like this big of a
Okay.
tree. Your point, but to that point about imposition there, I think that the agricultural angle is compelling, and I think that kind of goes into you talking about like Randy going and submitting like modifications to make more farm-friendly practices. I mean, I think most people would agree imposing strict landscaping requirements on a farm in a rural context, maybe not the best thing to do.
I'm not understanding why a farm stand doesn't have the same as of right stuff as,
Because it's zoning,
as a farm.
it's not wetlands. I mean, we agree.
I see.
We.
So it's
wetlands
more,
grants-
it's zoning.
It's all zoning, it's planning
Okay.
and zoning. So I think clarifying in the zoning regulations, the exemptions that farmers get and making that broad, if we want to be a farm-friendly community, is something that,
So is
I
that
think a lot of
something
people
that
could be
could be
supportive of.
added to maybe that's something that's just added to the landscaping
well,
regulation?
because right now it's like, right now it's purposefully flexible in landscaping. So I think that if someone made an argument that they thought it was like, you could stretch the argument to your point. So myself and Jeremy are very supportive of farm-friendly practices, and we don't want to overburden. We recognize that these are, let's say in a hypothetical case, I didn't recommend any additional landscaping on a new farm stand because, the character, it met the criteria because the trees were there and, not everyone will do that. And, people, they could really stick it to someone using this regulation if they really wanted to. I don't really know a way out of that other than like, I don't know that conservation could. I mean, they could always suggest it to planning and zoning.
So what,
but.
Was it zoning that stuck it to you in terms of the additional parking spaces?
Yeah. Even though in the requirements for the size stand that we have, we only needed, I think, one spot. So we
So
needed
how did they
3, and
justify
one would
that?
Be a handy, what?
Well, how did they justify that?
Because they anticipated to be busy. We're gonna sell tomatoes, garlic, peppers, like minimal, like just our excess produce, because we supply
Right.
to
Right,
mostly restaurants,
Right,
so
right.
it'd just be overflow.
Yep.
But apparently they would expect a lot of traffic on Newfield. So,
okay,
So the wonky reasoning for that is that if the way that our zoning regulations is set up, a farm stand requires what's called a special exemption, or special exception rather, which is a process that is open to a public hearing, and it provides the commission extra leeway in kind of determining what public health and safety, it gives them kind of additional leeway to impose conditions. If it was just a site plan, if it was allowed just by site plan, which means, hey, it's allowed in the zoning, like you said, one parking space, all they're allowed to do is look at the plan and say,
yep, looks good.
this meets zoning. But if it has that special exception status, then it allows this discretionary process to come out. And that's what they do. They're planning and zoning. They're always like, that's how they operate in their head. They're not thinking of giving people breaks. They're like, okay, like what can we think of that's wrong with this situation?
yeah, we weren't able to get the stand up this year because they added probably another $3,000 worth of requirements on top of us. So,
So in my opinion, I feel like that the bigger effect, which is something that, hopefully, people are working on, is that changing it from that special exception to a site plan for things like farming, just like going through our regulations in a more systematic way and kind of like figuring out what is, we want to be farm friendly, like this is what the suite of things we can do, presenting that to planning and zoning and letting them kind of talk it out as to what they're comfortable with, because ultimately that's like their greatest power is that they can make regulation. So at the end of the day, it's all up to them.
so now is this going to planning and zoning next and they're gonna review it?
Correct.
So is there any opportunity for us to add some kind of like recommendation within here to,
You could add another condition to this, or
and it might prompt the conversation? I mean, worst case scenario, they could take it out.
I mean, we can, yeah, I guess.
I mean, it doesn't have to be specific.
Yeah.
I'm thinking small businesses in general. I mean,
Well, then that would just be a more complicated process to figure out how we're gonna weave that into here in a way that makes sense. I mean, I would think something under, kind of like, this is, allowing for great flexibility in the layout provided, but being specific as to what that means maybe. Because again, it's like a flexible regulation. It can be, it's not set in stone even for a site plan. But I don't know, I think here it'd be hard to just like throw something in and then submit it to them. But if you wanted to look at, I mean, I sent it around, so if you want to look at it
yeah,
and
no,
kind of make some
I
suggestions.
guess I'm so new, like, under.
No, it's fine.
So, I mean, I'm just being in terms of like small businesses. What kinds of small businesses? Like,
The woman you were talking about, was she a chiropractor?
no,
Oh.
no, real estate. But I'm like most small businesses rent, when they're small. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah.
Like it wouldn't generally apply to most small businesses starting out,
Although I will, well,
would it?
sometimes a landlord will allow a tenant to do something that they want to do if they'll pay for it. So you have a situation where the landlord is not making the improvement, they're not paying for the improvements, they're signing off on it, but it's up to the applicant to like fund what has to be done for them to get what they want out of it. But often that's done, they're financing the project themselves, so they would, roll that into the financing because the landscaping requirements are pretty common. We actually have some of the least strict landscaping requirements because most other communities don't have that flexibility clause, so it's like what's here is here and they can't really get out of it. But I think maybe exploring other landscaping regulations in comparable communities is a good place to start, and they may have specific exemptions for farms or other small businesses. I don't know. I kind of did a little bit of a review myself on some communities and just had a hard time with finding folks that were either that would get back to me or from other communities or or just, looking at some of the other condition.
What about other businesses where people run it out of their house? Does that count as a,
Well, because they wouldn't be doing any substantial improvements. to the property. Like the definition of substantial improvement is usually made by the planner, and it would be, adding curbing to an existing parking lot wouldn't be substantial, but enlarging it more than 5 spaces, maybe, something like that. But that'd be a good thing to roll with Jeremy about doing a larger overview, looking at, I guess we're talking about two things, agriculture or small business.
So the other thing, I mean, I could see, accessibility to these plants as being prohibitive.
well, that's what I was saying, if we can identify maybe large nurseries here in state that would be willing to kind of contract or offer like catalog pricing of some sort to the town. So as people are opening new businesses or whatnot, we could say, hey, we do have this requirement for landscaping. We do recommend these guys, and we have kind of negotiated rates or something.
That would probably be problematic legally.
Probably.
Steering towards certain businesses.
Who are the,
If you
I
have
mean,
multiple,
who
it's
are
not just
the,
one.
That is true.
I'm just trying to, I mean, this was years ago, but when I was finding native shrubs, sourcing native shrubs for my yard, I was traveling to Massachusetts.
Planter's
like-
Choice, which is in Watertown.
Okay.
They're a big kind of generic, not generic, but they focus on developers and, folks that are doing landscape installation. And I know that they offer stuff, earth tones, but that's definitely more expensive. Native Nursery in Woodbury. I'm
Phrase about if for some reason species are difficult to
Source.
prohibit, then they can request
an exception.
an exception or
Yeah.
waiver or something like.
I can look into that. I will say that, so I get a lot of these in, I'm the landscape review guy, so when it comes in, that's like the part of the regulation that I look at. There are certain species that are just always available by conventional growers. Red maple is like, there's some cultivar of red maple that is like, and we don't get, I'm not like only native, and cultivar like is like the, kind of growth form that's cloned as a certain type of shape, those are widely available and you see them planted everywhere. And I can't imagine that they're significantly more expensive. Honey locust, that's something that I consider to be native, or I have a broad definition of what's native. That's another thing to kind of make it a little less restrictive, is to just define native.
Actually, I think is that definition in there? Okay.
So someone gives us gives zoning a blueprint, they have to actually name the shrubs and trees that they're putting in. But not just.
There's a
show this, like,
planting
little-
list, yeah.
Okay.
There's a planting list that
And-
goes with it.
And they also review it at the end before they get their CO.
What
You
happens
can
if-
bond it if for some, just in the weeds, but you don't need it to get your CO, but you have to put it in. You have to at least put down a cash that you're going to put it in, that's payable when you do the installation. Because it's so planting is seasonal specific. So if you finish your project in midsummer, we don't want you to have plans to get the CO. We want you to wait until fall. So we'll take money and then we'll pay you back when those plants get installed. And I will say, discretion of unelected bureaucrats, like if you're a CEO zoning enforcement officer who is more lax about planting, you may say, okay, it captures the spirit of what they were going for there. And then I met this one woman who's like, no, I get the entire list. And I go through and every once in a while I make them go and get the other one. These big projects, parking lot projects and stuff like that. I am maybe somewhere in between, or more at the spirit kind of level of things. I'm not gonna go chasing people down if it's like they're one shrub so short and it's like.
What if the
Full.
plant dies?
They're responsible for replacing them. That's like the site plan is like what they have to go by.
Do we have a landscape enforcement?
That would be me.
Drive around and make sure everyone's
Well,
adhering to their landscape.
so, and this is just kind of a zoning, what zoning is, but the, when a business comes in and they wanna, they wanna build a new site, right? They have to get a site plan approval, and that site plan has all of the elements of zoning code, and it's really thick and complicated. So we all go through it, we make the site plan, it's approved by planning and zoning, and then that site plan lives in our files as like what they have on file that they can do and cannot do. If they want to get a change, they have to come to us and they have to get it approved. And if it's minor, it may not be a big deal. If it's major, it has to go back to the commission. But if we get a complaint, this is often complaint generated,
Mhm.
Hey, I live next to a factory building and they cut down all their
The
trees.
solar farm or whatever it's called that went in up by Bishop Donnelly Field,
Yeah,
they planted a bunch of shrubs and then a lot of them died. And then so I keep my eye on them because I'm like, well, that shouldn't be, but some of them did kind of come back. I don't think they replanted them, but they kind of came back, but there's still some out there that are brown. So it'd be up to me to call and say, hey, I noticed this. And you would have to track down the owners of the,
and they'd be responsible for
replacing them, right? I'm gonna take a closer.
But anyways, that's how that generally works. I don't go and like monitor all, there's no way.
So on commercial properties or mixed use properties, do you need permits for changing the landscaping? Like if a tree is dead,
I
the
mean,
tree is dead, do you need permits to take it down?
no,
Okay,
but you have to replace it.
okay.
And then you're starting to get into the land of what can we actually do with our staff and
Yeah.
what is a priority?
Yeah,
My
okay.
whole life is just sorting things
Yeah,
in priority
yeah,
buckets.
okay.
And so it's like, are we gonna really prioritize doing that for a small? No one's gonna do that
Okay.
because we have tons of big companies that have whole parking lots full of landscaping that maybe like they're all dead and like
Mhm.
that's the person that's gonna,
Yep.
get the attention,
Prioritized, yeah.
not the one person who's not there, but
Okay.
anyway.
Can I ask a different basic question, like, why aren't the native species? Are we just, because our landscaping shops just marketing kind of exotic looking birds and trees, why aren't the? native
DE,
marketed?
so my information is old, I'm old. But I remember DEP putting out pamphlets for here's a common invasive species and here's a great native replacement for it. Right, so and those publications are probably still available. So like if you want that red color of burning bush in the fall, you can do high bush blueberry. If you want something I never thought it was very similar, but you could do bayberry for barberry. And, they had this whole list
Substitute this.
of substitute this for this. And I just think that the invasives are inexpensive. That's what
Well,
I don't really know, but
yeah, they're inexpensive because they're easier to propagate and
Because
they
they're
survive better
Yeah.
because they don't have any natural
Well,
predators.
see, it's out of control though. You look at my neighborhood, it's a fairly new neighborhood. The invasives.
so what do they
You
have? Is
won't
it like
number
multiflora rose and bittersweet and
Japanese,
knotweed?
knotweed, yeah.
So,
I kind of have a
but
sweet spot for Japanese.
choking
knotweed.
out everything else. It's really hard to eradicate because, someone, made that trip to
Mhm.
the landscape shop and said, kind of neat. and Goes off.
I think that's what it is. They don't have to, they're not accountable. They can sell whatever, and if this is a good seller and it's. A
So
lot
does
of
it
stuff,
prohibit them
whatever.
to put any exotics? Like they can use natives, but like can they mix no exotics in it too if they wanted to?
It's
Not
impossible to eradicate.
for the landscaping that's subject to this. So there's kind of.
So they can't. meet
I'm
the
kind of glad we're
requirements
going
of
over
having
that.
natives and then mixing in other exotics or whatever.
So let's say this is the hypothetic law, right? The areas that are regulated by this regulation include this, right? So you'd have, frontage. You'd have one tree, 2 trees, this is an 80-foot frontage, and then you'd have the 5 shrub or 10
10
shrubs,
shrubs.
right?
Where's the, oh, the driveway would come in.
Let's say the driveways or here, but whatever we're doing to this, right? That's your access. This is one area that's subject. The other area is for, you're getting into this regulation, parking spaces greater than 7, I think. I'll have to look at it, but there's a number of parking spaces. Let's say 10 for our purposes. After every 10, there needs to be a landscaped island that has at least one native tree. And the idea of that is just to keep it Walmart parking lot situations, right? Like you don't have a giant heat island there. You have these baskets here. So this part only applies to parking greater than 15 spaces. So anything with greater than 15 spaces, every 10 spaces, you have to put a landscaped island that has a tree. So this regulation would be saying any of this would have to be native. But if they have less than 15 spaces, they don't need to do anything in here. But if they put a tree over here, can do whatever they want it to be. It's not subject to the regulation. Does that make sense?
So those could be exotic.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's just saying that what is required to meet the basic standards of the regulation must be native in this revision.
Oh, okay.
So it's not
So
saying,
everything they plant has to
no,
be
they
native.
can plant they could plant a whole garden bed of whatever, or have a whole shrub row in the back of the house of boxwood. Doesn't, it doesn't matter because it's not regulated by,
The required.
it's just the required
So
2 or 3 trees would have to be native.
why aren't like Walmart and stuff, why don't they have more trees and stuff in their lots?
If you look at their site plan, they meet, because they actually just resubmitted. Earth Tones is doing all of their re-landscaping of the property. They meet our zoning. So if you go to the Walmart parking lot, that is what a compliant lot looks like. We're not talking like massive forestation. Torrington's regulations are pretty much squarely where everyone's else is, except they're a little bit more flexible. In my review of like looking at I looked at Canton, Waterbury, Norwich. We try to look at like Norwich sized towns because we're kind of they're
Analogous to, yeah.
as far as size and makeup. But yeah, so we're pretty much in line with everyone. They're all just so different. It's like every municipality just does it a different way, or a different kind of complicated way. So it's kind of hard to compare them all anyway. You're like, this one uses this formula and this one, ours is at least simple and straightforward. I think it's like, you don't have to do calculations and stuff. They have to do it in like a very different way, each one of them. So that's a big thing developers have to deal with. If they're, not a small, if they're bigger, they have to go through this every single municipality.
So when they go in front of zoning gives them a list of what the native plants that they would suggest that to grow, or is it just
Do
that
they?
native plant as a general?
Well, what they do is they submit their site plan to planning and zoning. Once it comes in, Jeremy Leifert, the planner, will distribute it to all of the departments. Comment on fire marshal, police, traffic, engineering, myself, conservation sometimes, and wetlands. When I make my comments, which is landscaping, lighting, conservation, wetlands, and signage. When I do landscaping comments, because I'm a lover of trees and native landscaping, I'll provide alternatives if I don't see native species their list. I'll say, we ask that you provide native species. Some good things will be, red maple or red bud, because there's power lines above and we don't want to be conflicting with the power lines, that kind of thing. So we'll try. I put a lot more work in making species recommendations, because often they'll just look at it and be like, yeah, sure, that's great. We can find that commercially. And I keep a big list of all the species that I see repetitively, so I know kind of what's more commercially available. River birch is one that like is everywhere. Like that must be available widely commercially, because I see it absolutely
Yeah,
everywhere.
to me, it was always the shrubs that were harder.
Inkberry is widely
Is
commercial
it?
available. Winterberry is. There's quite a few. It's
Okay.
gaining in popularity and becoming more because there's more and more of these type of regulations, it's incentivizing it.
That's good.
Free trade, so.
Well, that, I mean, that would be really nice if that was happening more. I mean, it could be. I haven't done landscaping in a long time.
I mean, if other people want to look at other regulations, I'll go back and kind of look at this idea of first of all, definition of native that's
I
inclusive.
think that that's, yeah.
Because native could mean the United States, could mean Connecticut,
Mm,
it could mean the Northeast, it could mean climate migration and species that are from the South that are in the pathway to become more favorable in this area, which I usually do.
yeah, I would think so.
But, we can kind of define native broadly. You do like a US definition of native, that's gonna give you a really wide palette to work with.
Is that the nature of what you wanted to see?
I mean, I would probably prefer the Northeast with
Mhm.
like including Pennsylvania,
Okay,
but.
I would agree with that. I don't think we should do a statewide, I mean, a United States wide, nationwide.
I like the idea that now states are making it mandatory instead of mowing lawns on the highways and all, they're putting perennials, they're putting flowers, and I
Right.
think that's a great idea, not only for the
It
drivers.
was
they-
so pretty. I had to drive down to North Carolina
Yeah,
last weekend and I was trying to
Heard.
figure out what was happening because there were so many big fields of wildflowers. And I was trying to figure out if they were I mean, it didn't look wild, it looked very cultivated and I was trying to figure if they were farms or what. And it was some kind of pollinator program and wildflower program for the state.
Myrtles are really beautiful going down.
It was really enjoyable to drive with that stuff.
So something that, of my work is, roadway projects. We look into ways to limit the island and the hard surface and allow more, infiltration, impervious surfaces. And I just wonder if that is anywhere in the requirements, like, I don't know, I need to go to like ShopRite in Canton, where they have the islands, they have stones in there now, instead of, either paved asphalt. The islands, this way, any rain that falls goes in between the stones and down into the soil. And maybe it's a topic for a future meeting or something, but that might even be something nice to incorporate somewhere, somehow.
The zoning has impervious surface percentages for lots. That kind of captures that. I mean, you can
Okay.
change it, but so what we do is if someone wants to add more parking than say their impervious would allow, that's when like pervious pavers and those type of things come into play because they can still park on them. Or they want to like a part-time travel lane in the back or something for
Yeah.
fire access or something.
The parking lot on the corner of Main Street and Route 4 has pervious pavers, right?
Yeah,
Correct.
Yeah.
yeah, that guy did the whole system. That's what he does for a living.
Yeah.
In fact, I think he got a grant from the state.
As a matter of fact, I suggested that for, Derby, Main Street in Derby. They're, rebuilding their Main Street and making it, instead of one lane in each direction, it's gonna be 4 lanes. The state of Connecticut's doing it because it's Route 34, but, they're having a parking lot. And I noticed the one in Torrington, and I'm like, hey, how about doing something like this there? So the designer did do that. Everybody's, cognizant of the MS4 requirements, which require things like that. And then they took it another step further and, they're gonna, the on-street parking lane, parallel parking lanes are also gonna be
Oh, that's nice.
pavers.
Did you know that Torrington's not an MS4?
I did not know that. I didn't know.
We don't have to go down this rabbit hole, but
Yeah, no, I didn't.
but it's not strange for the size community that this is. We don't have MS4. I'm not gonna
What's
get
MS for?
into, municipal
I-
4M. It's
It's a, let's
municipal
see,
storm.
general
sewer-
permit for the
Sure.
discharge of stormwater from small municipal separate storm sewer systems.
Yeah.
Is the product of a mandate by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency as part of its stormwater phase 2 rules in 1999. So we have less strict stormwater. So that is why like all the roads just go right, like the catch basins for the Or like the north end is just going right
That's
into the
probably
river.
part of it,
That's
yeah.
typically roadways, especially in parking lots, you set up curbing and catch basins and you collect it and you pipe it out to a river or a wetland or something, and then all that salt and everything that.
It's
you know,
going in,
Is going to
which
those
is definitely
places.
happening here.
Right, and so the idea is to create rain gardens, which will fill up with water in a heavy rain.
They filter it.
It's like a little pool, but then it seeps back down so that you're not channeling all of this rainwater.
Dirty,
to the-
like,
Yeah,
you know,
bad stuff to the rivers and streams and, you know, aquifer and things, well, I mean, it's going in an aquifer, but like you're not directing this concentrated yucky water to these places. It's.
I mean, it also it's just like sheet flow off of roads too. Like the place I saw that was the biggest eye opener for me was when the Target project went in. And I was doing the site walk with the soil scientist who was checking the soils. So there's this embankment down into that, uh, you know, it's kind of a low spot. And it was 5 or 6 inches of just accumulated silt and sand and stuff from the road, and it was covering a whole, like low, like the whole wetlands was just kind of covered with this stuff, and then you could see the wetland soils below that. But it was very eye-opening to see, like, it was like very metallic and dark. And probably a lot of heavy metals and stuff just from all the traffic on 202. And that, there was no catch basins, that's just sheet flowing down over decades to this one, you know, into this area.
But doesn't it have to be cleaned out?
Mm.
Just
If
can't.
it's a basin, it does.
It's not a basin.
This is
It was
traffic.
just the wetland. It was prior to Target being developed. Like if you're in the Target parking lot, it's kind of up high, it's raised up, and there's like, to the front of it is this
Right.
low spot. That's like this wetland area. And I guess that 202 must have been built up, you know, to a higher level as well. And it sheet flows down into there, and it's like all of the, you know, everything that comes off of a car, brakes and whatever. Plus the sand and salt on the road, and it was kind of fascinating to see. It was horrifying and fascinating, but you know, just the amount of accumulation over a really large area of stuff, just what happened.
So would you like me to come back? I can come back with another version and do this a little bit more. I mean, we're not really under a huge gun here. We just would have, I mean, if we get something by the next meeting,
So specifically, what do you have in your notes as far as what the specifics
I
are?
was
Do
gonna
we
come
all
up with
agree
a
on it?
definition,
Native, okay,
that in there, and then I was gonna look into some kind of prohibitive source waiver, like if there was something,
okay,
I mean, in my head, the escape hatch is always the fact that this is flexible. So if
Right.
someone calls me and they say, I can't get these material, I'm just like, what can you get?
Mhm.
I talk to
Right.
them about it. And
But again, like you said, it's kind of dependent upon the personality of whoever the staff member
flexible.
is at that time, yeah.
Yeah, so if you're going and someone else comes in, they may have a different.
But that's gonna be true no matter what.
Yeah.
Right, that's
So-
just kind of the enforcement of regulations. I mean, it is true that unelected bureaucrats have a lot of power. This kind of thing.
But can we encourage, you know, using the native species, discourage?
That's what he's doing right now.
Well,
You know, is that
We already
worth
had
thing
that.
or
Didn't it
just
previously
make it
already have
something?
that? We're making it required now.
right, it's changing it from changing it from a should to a shall. Invasive, the original language was invasive plants,
Should be.
should be removed in areas, where pre-development, but, oh, no, that's different. Yeah. What it was, the use of invasive or potentially invasive plants shall be prohibited. Okay, that doesn't change. The state defines invasive plants, you
Mhm.
can't use any of them, so you can't technically use barberry.
Okay.
The use of species native to the northeast, oh, so we have that, so that's in there now, is the use of species native to the northeast United States is required, would be the change. From the use of species native to the northeast United States is suggested.
I think that's such a minor I mean, I would like to have native defined. I totally agree with that.
Like define Northeast United States?
No, just what you said, like, so it's already in there.
Yes, it is.
Okay, so that's fine.
Is Northeastern, like,
Yeah.
is that acceptable?
That's acceptable to me.
Can you change the verbiage from, suggested to highly encouraged?
Well, right
You-
now, it's been changed to required.
Right,
So
that's what the
we're
proposal
proposing. We
is.
We're proposing.
I mean, well,
required.
here's the thing, here's the other thing, is that we're making this suggestion, and it's gonna go to zoning, and then they're going to do, I mean, they might say no. Right?
It is
So-
possible. I mean,
So, I mean, I don't know. To me, I wouldn't, if you have a change like that, I wouldn't wanna weaken the language. Cause for them, like, what's the point? It's a waste of their time. Right? Like, should be to highly encouraged is just, it's not that different. What's,
yeah,
Yeah,
the
sure.
difference is should for shall in this case.
I think if you guys are confident that it's not gonna be
a burden?
burden on any developer, it seems like it would require it.
I think the
Um,
only change would be that it, they're gonna be working from a smaller palette of species, because like things like red maple are, I'm sorry, things like red maple are like widely available, and they're probably less expensive because of that, so they're gonna choose those things in River Bridge.
Mhm.
Personally, I don't have a huge problem with that.
Mhm.
Not necessarily the invasive thing, but I've seen a lot of, the stuff that's affected me has been some research looking at native plants and and insects, and just like the diversity of insects that a native plant will host versus a non-native plant, even if it's not invasive,
Mhm.
ends up feeding all the birds, right? Because it's just like, there's just a
More.
ton more on there. They're not necessarily hurting the tree, but they can actually live on it because they're adapted with it. So, that effect is positive, versus something that's non-native that doesn't have any insect on it because it's not from here and insects can't. They're very specific to individual plants.
I guess my only concern is the shall to required, or the suggested to shall or whatever. Is not so much the developers, the big guys, it's the small businesses. That's the only thing. And if we're saying that, it's already outlined which plants are considered invasive species, we already know what we can't use.
Right, because
So
it's
now we're
already in there.
requiring that you can only use a small subset that is likely probably more expensive. I'm not sure.
Mm. Who's to
But
say it's
it's-
less
it's just-
expensive, right?
Well, no, I don't know. I'm not gonna, I don't wanna pretend too much that I understand.
I just worry
The
about,
cost.
I just worry about adding more financial burden to the small business.
You know what?
Not so much developers are,
Maybe I could try to do a little research on what species are considered native to the northeast.
And readily, well, that's easy.
Well, I would think just doing a little bit, if someone could do a little bit of research on looking up distributors and just seeing what the difference is, prices, right? Like, again, Planter's Choice, I know, is one that has both, but even
is that
just,
like an online thing or is that?
no, they're a commercial nursery. Again, they have multiple locations, but there's one in Watertown where they
Okay.
grow them right there. Cause they have to be kind of local. They grow them on site and then I mean, you can always get stuff at Home Depot. So maybe it doesn't, maybe Home Depot is where we want to check, because the local landowner, like the small
The
business
small
owner,
business just gonna
it's
go
gonna go
there.
to Home Depot. They're not gonna go to a
Yeah.
big company like that. So maybe go to like Home Depot, Lowe's, local nursery like Moscarella's or something like that, and just see what they have and what the price spread is. And if it's like $5 more expensive, is that a huge deal, or is it? Well, we can at least look at we can make that determination if
Mhm.
we see what that information is. Because I'm not using data, but I don't know. I don't want to pretend like I know that
Right.
it's cheaper, we think, right?
Yeah, well, I just, the town determining what's expensive and what's inexpensive for somebody is.
But if at least if it's the same, right? I mean, we have to. I mean,
If it's apples to apples,
Right,
price rise.
right.
Everything too,
So-
because you said you really haven't had any pushback when you recommend it. So
Right.
if it were a issue, people would come back and say,
I haven't had anyone push back on the price of natives as an issue for
Doing
any of that.
theirs.
Usually, yeah, no, I've never, the small businesses are not doing site improvements generally. The ones that are a little bit larger, they're getting ones that are submitting a site plan, so they have to get someone to make a site plan, right? The farm thing is unusual, I think kind of unfair, but yeah, having a farm put together a site plan, usually these are like, you know, an engineer, a professional engineer comes in and they have
You
a.
put a
suite of
grace
things.
period in, so say small business, the startup is always the largest cost for any small business.
Yeah,
Is there any way of adding a grace period, say you have like 5 years to kind of get your landscaping kind of in this direction?
Then you got somebody that has to oversee that, and that becomes a nightmare for the city.
it's just difficult to track, but I mean, it is. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, all I can speak to is what I do, and we're very understanding of situations, and we work with people, and we, you know, I actually just had as an example, I just had a situation come up with, I won't name the business, but they had this exact setup, 2 trees, 10 shrubs, that exact setup. They're a fairly small business. We went back and forth on landscaping a lot, and we talked to, and they were like, okay, well, I'm working with my landscaper, and they are saying this, and they can get this, and they can mow around this. And I worked with them, and we kind of did some horse trading, and I was like, listen, this spot, you don't have anything, like, there needs to be one there, because it's like at the edge of an embankment, we want to have something holding the embankment together with root system, and she's like, that's fine. But we went back and forth on it. But again, I can only speak to myself, and it's a
Right.
very complicated,
I know,
regulation
she
is
said that the
complicated.
town is very willing to work. I did not have that experience.
Well,
I
our
mean,
planning
this- I mean,
department
since-
is different than our engineering department. would
Yeah.
you- I mean, or,
Okay.
but
I mean,
yeah.
I thought it was interesting watching the city put in, you know, the roads and the curbing in the north end, where I know one of the big complaints was that, you know, of businesses was that, when they're doing new sidewalks, they're required to do granite curbing, and, you know, this was this big city requirement regarding plows, and the plows ripping up the road, and then when the city put in,
They put in
they
concrete.
they put in concrete, or even sometimes just asphalt.
Yeah,
You know, so it's sort of, I was watching that, and you're like, oh, it's a little hypocritical there.
yeah, oh, yeah.
Well, I just want to say, I don't pretend to know all of the benefits of planting native species, but I know there are, you know, there's a lot of reasons to consider that.
I
do some
think
homework
it's
on
kind
that
of a,
too,
I think it's a no-brainer that we require natives, but, I have a bunch of materials, I can do some research and try some things out, if you'd like me to bring that in for the next meeting.
And I'll look at this, like, site waiver, again, it gets, I mean, having yeah, I don't know, the thing I always, it's just, it's complicated with regulation.
You know, it'd be a fun project. Why don't you pull the print for the next meeting of the gas station? And it's also the hamburger joint. Let's see what they put in there. What they have to have their, in order to get the zoning approved, they had to have the shrubbery and the trees. So it'd be interesting to see what they put in for native species.
Well, I don't know that they put native species,
But I don't think they haven't put anything in yet, but
but like,
I
it
would
may
like to
not be
see-
on their plan.
What's on the site plan?
I don't know what's, I haven't looked at the landscaping yet for that, we haven't gotten to that stage. I mean, we could look at a plan if you, I just don't
I
know
was
if
just
that gets to what we're like the ultimate, I mean, we can, I'm happy to do that, to bring a plan, look at it, but I don't know if that's.
Like
what-
just for informational purposes on how the whole thing
Yeah.
works and
Yeah.
what the, you know, what the
Curiosity, yeah.
planting list, I mean, I think that that's a fine thing to
Should I
do in
bring a
terms of.
plan, should I bring a plan of a small business?
Why don't you, can you, maybe,
It's all
um,
public, right? Like, it's not.
right, it's all
I feel
public.
bad about calling out a small business. I can try to redact, you know, like not, if it's something that we're gonna project, I won't show their address and stuff like that, because I don't.
I mean, you could do like,
that,
you
but-
could- you could see the difference between like what a bigger business, a parking lot, and say what, you know, a small business is. And I would just, you know, just for educational purposes, a lot of new people on the commission, and I can see
So-
what it is that we're talking about.
And it may help bring up ideas too.
Yeah.
I always get more creative juices flowing when there's a plan.
Mhm.
So, so in other words, the plan that they got approved for the gas station and Whoppers with the hamburger place there. They didn't have to show anything, they just showed some round little things and.
No,
say-
they had landscaping. I'm sure they,
Okay.
you have to show species.
You
it's
have to
just-
show around.
In order to get it
You have to have
approved.
a,
Okay.
they're all numbered. There's, you know, like
I
on the
just may have not
plan,
used the
they're all
natives.
numbered.
Okay.
And they have to spec.
And
like, they have,
then-
Spec on like what the size of the
Yes.
installation is and like what.
And then there's a planting list by number that goes with the plan. You can look and
Okay.
reference back and forth.
All right, well,
Okay.
I'll bring a couple plans. We're good with the native definition now,
Mm-hmm.
or at least if someone wants to explore that or has different suggestions, this is the time to look into that.
Maybe you could have bamboo.
David's already on the.
That's a joke, a joke.
The library parking lot that's for redevelopment, does that city have to come to the same standards?
Yeah.
Can we use that as?
Is that where they're gonna put the diner?
No, it's the existing parking lot next to the library that they're redoing.
The Love of Cafe Joey.
Yes, the one on the other side of the river. Yeah, because that's gonna be part of the trail is gonna come down that along the river and then cross over to Franklin Plaza down.
Okay.
But, okay, so
All right, so we'll move on to old business. The first thing is the east side flooding issues.
Yeah, so, our city engineer actually reviewed, this was something you weren't here for the last meeting. The issue at hand was flooding issues, kind of Clearview, Darling Street, that area of town, kind of off of, New Harwinton Road. My wife always calls it Birch Park. I'm like, it's not Birch Park. In Torrington, but I just like saying it. But yeah, those streets there's a lot of water that comes down that hill. It kind of goes through a period where it's like channelized, it's
This is
pipes.
to the left of New Harwinton Road as you're coming down?
I have a map.
I mean, there is a,
That's why I wanted to keep this. up. So this neighborhood here, so I don't know, there's not labels, this is East Main Street, the highway, Burger King, somewhere in there, yeah, right there. This is New Harwinton, right? Route 4 comes up here. This is Clearview.
okay,
This is Darling Street, I think is this one.
okay.
So this whole area, and I don't have the streams on here that are mapped on this product, but there's a bunch of streams that come down here. You can see it's really densely developed.
Yep.
And they get piped, they're exposed, piped, exposed, and there's a number of them coming off the hillside here. They all end up down in the Naugatuck here. Now, because there's so many opportunities for debris to get into the pipes, and then it closes, and then that happens again and closes, it gets clogged all the time. There's a lot of sediment that comes in there because there's just a lot of activity in that part of town. And there's just been major flooding issues with this huge amount of rain that we've been getting this year.
Okay,
It was in the news a bunch where this woman had it come down the street. There's her street, her house had a break in the curbing. And it came down around her house and into her swimming pool. And she was like trapped in an island and the city had to deliver sandbags. Same on another Darling Street property up there. So the city's trying to be like, well, what can we do? I mean, it's like old infrastructure. We can't really afford to replace it wholesale. And what are they gonna do? It needs a bigger plan
Yep.
to do the redevelopment, and that doesn't exist at this time. So the city, so the mayor and the engineer are like, well, what can conservation and wetlands do to maybe help educate, talk to the landowners or do assessments of the area or something that the city can do to kind of understand the problem and or communicate solutions to the residents.
When I think I spoke up and said, seems like an engineering study needs to be done. Not, literally, what would we do? How would we determine exactly what should be done, what the problems are? It's not one isolated little area. It's like, you've got to look at the watershed and the existing system and,
Right.
it's.
And
Is the
complicated.
flooding necessarily at the roadside? Or is it is it flooding because of debris in their backyard?
it's from channels where it's jumping out of the channel and into people's yards.
Now, where you're saying it's collecting debris, is there anything there to divert the debris? Like, are there grates or anything like that?
Yeah, but then they get clogged.
We have any one that goes and kind of like, I don't know, visits these things or clears them
What's
out?
the maintenance?
Engineering does it, but
They can't keep
they
up
can't
with it.
keep up with it.
So
Is
what
that
is
something we
it,
can
so,
educate the community on?
so is that what
locate
they're
these spots?
asking us to educate the community on, is these points?
Yeah, well, and the way I read this situation is that there are many private ownerships within this area, and the ownership of the channels in the areas are owned privately.
Okay,
So getting people, the mayor and engineer are looking at it as mayor and engineers would, and they're saying, how can we make sure the flow goes down the hill and doesn't, go into people's yards?
Mhm.
Inland wetlands is maybe not looking at that necessarily. They're saying, well, we want to protect the stream.
Yeah.
And conservation would be like, well, woody debris does have some value, and disturbing and creating like really simple channelized systems isn't good for the environment, those environments necessarily. And obviously there needs to be a balance because people live there. It's like
Mhm.
a real problem. So the one that, so Karen touched on, this needs to be a larger study, and we kind of at the last meeting, we're going down the road of, well, how would we move down? How would we get that? And then Karen was talking about some funding from.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like
But
we
what
need a
was
grant.
the condition of that funding?
Well, I think did I send you the notice and you
Yeah.
have to apply for it?
But you need a disaster mitigation plan, hazard mitigation plan.
Well,
I think it has to be identified in your hazard mitigation plan, the specific project or the area as a problem.
And do we not have a hazard mitigation plan? Do we have one?
We have,
maybe it's not in there because it hasn't really
This
come up
new?
before.
we have a county hazard mitigation or a COG. We have a
Um,
COG hazard mitigation plan, but the COG issues
Yeah, it's
are,
granular.
right, exactly, because they're covering Goshen and
Right.
Salisbury and us. And I did look through it, and it did generally say local flooding as an issue. I don't know if that's enough for the state to fund a more detailed study, if just general,
Now, has this
Well,
happened before?
yes.
Like how, I mean, what's the frequency of this issue?
I think that this woman had this exact thing happen to her 10 years ago.
So is there, in that particular spot, any opportunity to like create like a retaining wall or something that would help it from not overflowing in that particular one area?
Yeah, I mean,
Maybe that would-
that's a reasonable,
I mean, I don't know if that alone, again, a study of, on engineering looking at this
one
could
part,
determine if that alone would help, but.
part of it is just the amount of rain that we got this year, like the system is just not designed to handle it.
Well,
So even
they
without
need it.
clogging.
We know that that's gonna happen
It's
more and
gonna-
more, right?
Right, so they need to be
Not designed
replaced.
for these huge farms.
And that's where a plan would be effective, because it would say, well, we know what the size pipes are, we know what they're rated for, we know, what kind of the storm frequency was this year, or what size rain events were triggering this. And they were only the huge ones. I drove by there a few times and didn't see any, when we had a lot of rain, it was those like 6, 7 inch, whatever, the big events that we had this year, and one day where we got like a ton of rain.
So I mean, I could see a couple of different things. I could see a stopgap measure being to identify where clogs are happening, look at who the landowner is and paying them a visit. And just saying that, some of the, this is having some flooding problems, and while we're working on re-engineering this entire neighborhood, which is a long-term goal, needs funding. Something that you could do is to just keep an eye on this area and make sure it's clear of debris.
Is the city looking to do something?
Well, they're gonna have to. I mean, they might,
They're asking us to
yeah.
help.
yeah, but I mean, like, what do we do?
Yeah.
But
So
If it was just one
Yeah,
location, yeah, I can understand that, but it seems like
it's multiple places. Well, that's what I'm
Right.
saying. There are but I would think that that you could identify, and it's possible that you can even just send a letter out to everybody in the neighborhood and say, do you have a water flow on your property that clogs up? I mean, They can self-identify.
No, you were saying
Right,
the new
or no?
map is like almost real time, so you could see wetlands, stuff like that. Is there any way of seeing where those issues are, those problem areas are?
Not really like dry weather, because it's so, I mean, they're obviously gonna.
So
clean
if we
up
looked
these
at
pretty
this
quick.
recently,
When you
when the
pulled
issue
it-
was happening, we could see.
Potentially. But we don't have that level of like surveillance on our citizens.
So you
yet.
can't, you can't.
How many people, how many houses,
Darn.
how many houses are being affected?
It seems like 10, around 10 in this area. Immediately, I'm trying to find the water course. Here it is. So this is one big one. It kind of comes down, this is just what the nature of the neighborhood looks like, right? Comes down here and then it's piped here and goes underground completely, and then it might emerge somewhere up there. It comes down here and this is a huge problem area. See this,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
yeah, that's a whole nother issue. So a lot of this is it's so complicated. These people who will not be named,
What street is?
Clearview, Clearview. These are all trees here, right? All the trees went away. And nothing was planted except lawn, and now the channel's getting ripped apart. Because water's like flying down here and it's like, undermining everything because there's no vegetation to hold the bank.
That's
there.
kind of good property too, right?
Yeah, and that's creating sedimentation issues that are flowing downstream, clogging up this drain.
Yeah, I don't think it's a simple solution.
It's a really complicated thing and it's hard for us to say anything. The one thing so my recommendation for really easy low hanging fruit, were you part of this?
Trout Unlimited Kim Barberry.
Distributing that to people who are within the stream, like using GIS to figure out everyone who is adjacent to the stream, and then sending a targeted mailing.
So this is, yeah. It's just talking about
It's basically
stream maintenance and
Yeah.
education. Well, that's what I was saying. I mean, like, what can we do to, that does seem like an easy solution.
I mean, that will educate people on what is required, when they need to get inland wetlands permit for doing work to maintain the stream, and it kind of it tells the landowner that it's the landowner's responsibility to keep the stream clean.
Yeah, but that guy that has that erosion there, I mean, there's nothing he can do. Is he trying to bring the city to court on that? Is he,
I don't know if he's bringing the city to court, but he wants the city to fix it.
I mean, that's a
And
main.
like,
oh,
city-
we'll plant a bunch of trees.
I was gonna say, can the city put some
How
more
about
plants
the
there
farm?
to keep it from?
Let's plant a bunch of trees where you took them down.
Well, and to Karen's point, this one is so complicated because they're saying it's an overflow and it's not a real channel, and I don't know what the storm sewer system is there, and if part of it's shunted away. These are such weird quasi-natural things, these remnant channels,
Mhm.
that it's so complicated. Like, what can we recommend? Like, it's not in our scope. It's an engineering question.
That's where I think
And
it's.
plant and
involves a study, but
Another observation, I went around those neighborhoods. Some of the sandbag houses, it seems like the water is being pushed up through storm drains. It's just not at where the streams were crossing road, but they were
Yeah.
backed up into this, they were bubbling up from the storm drains and crossing the road. As the storm drains were draining, they were actually pushing it
Backing
up.
up, yeah.
So is there any way to look at that storm drain system to relieve the pressure?
That would be an engineering study.
Yeah,
well, they can TV that.
yeah, so maybe,
Or some drains are so old, they're broken, you
yeah,
know.
but is it possible there's something else going on? You know, it has been working generally. Be some clog somewhere else in that draining system that take the pressure off.
I think everyone intentionally's perspective is that this is like unprecedented sort of
Yeah.
climate change driven,
Yes,
like
yeah.
changes in rainfall patterns that just culverts are just not designed for storms. This, like when they do all the analysis to put this or did it all, which was, I don't know, maybe definitely more rudimentary than it happens today when this was all first installed. They were definitely not anticipating storms.
But I mean,
this
even
number
like,
of inches at a single time.
what's the, so you do things to like 100-year storm, right? You're building stuff for 100-year storm oftentimes. But the frequency of a 100-year storm is now what? It's
Right,
like
right.
much, much shorter. It's like every 10 years.
I mean, definitely more frequent.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're in a different place on this. This is a new,
Yes, yeah, we're gonna have to adapt to the challenges that a changing climate, microclimates and, I mean, it's all about water. It's either gonna be the scarcity of water or
Right.
too much water. You know, like it's all,
So I mean,
it all comes down to water.
I can keep. Um. So the study thing, I think, is something that, you know, there is a path forward, but it may require a hazard mitigation plan for Torrington, which Jeremy, you know, our planner, thinks is a good idea. Just because we
They
have
don't have
such
one
different
already.
problems and we're a large urban area that is a significant part of the population cog-wide, you know, but.
So do we have to go back to the mayor with something? Like, I mean, so who was asking us to weigh in?
The city engineer.
City engineer was asking us to weigh in?
Yeah, well, he's like. Yeah. I guess, I think, I don't wanna like wade into the politics of it.
Yep.
I think that there may have been promises made that the city would do something and I hope that an educational campaign would be something that the city could do.
Okay,
That's
In
my
face
read
of-
of the situation.
all right,
I-
and that's
I-
easy enough to send out, but
Not a great solution. It could be a first step.
yeah,
And I know how to do, I would just get a very targeted list.
Yeah.
And it would take a lot of my time because people are gonna be calling me and, you know, I'll be, I have to go out and look at sites with people and that's all great. And I'm happy to do that. But yeah, you're right. It doesn't get to the core of the problem and.
no, I mean,
Not
I think,
to
I
that
agree
con-
that it's a good first step.
Yeah.
It's not a horrible first step.
Who finances the engineering study if we can get it?
That would be something that we would, I mean,
You'd have to get grant money
I
for
don't know,
it.
but I don't,
Usually.
yeah. The hazard mitigation,
What I was gonna say, our Naugatuck Valley cog, the one I work for, they, a couple years ago, hired a firm and I think they created hazard mitigation plans for every town in our cog. So I don't know where that money came from, because that's not my end of things, but,
they didn't do just a region-wide one, they did
I
one
don't think so.
individual.
I think it was very specific to each town, so the cog should be doing these things. And I don't know if the city can put pressure on them to do that.
Well, I can talk to Jeremy about that, I mean, I know that. I think it's challenging with a cog, when you have a cog, and I don't know how the mechanics of the cogs as well as you probably do, definitely do. Each member municipality, the cog has equal vote, right? And so if you're voting for everyone to have their own individual hazard mitigation plan, that's different than if you just have Torrington and it's one vote out of, you know, like one vote out of whatever, how many, 15 municipalities and they,
Well, I don't know, I mean, certainly every municipality should have a hazard mitigation plan. And it's only a benefit to them, and I believe our cog sought funding to, and hired the firm, we managed it. And then that firm worked with all of the member municipalities to create individual plans, I can confirm that. But the
yeah,
cog took the lead on hiring, you know, getting the grant money, hiring the firm, taking the steps to do that, but in the end, so I don't know, like, why would anyone not want to vote
well,
for
if you have
something like
if you have a
that?
rural municipality where everyone is concerned about what they're paying into the cog, and I don't know if they pay an extra for it, or if it's just covered under their annual expense for the cog. But if you have a Goshen, they maybe don't need it. What are they gonna do? They may not implement it anyway. They may be happy with a cog level hazard mitigation plan to meet what their
Oh, like
needs.
why bother
Salisbury
kind of thing.
doesn't really, Torrington is the
Right, we're
only
kind of
major center.
surrounded by.
Winstead maybe
Yeah.
too, but like, whereas the Naugatuck Valley, it's like, all of those
Right,
municipalities are
right.
dealing
You know,
with
I didn't
flooding.
think of it that way, but yeah,
are
I
urbanized.
suppose
No,
it's
I
a
would, I mean,
setup.
can you
That's just a guess, I don't know.
No, that could be it.
confirm that local flooding, I mean, that is local flooding, so can you confirm that local flooding is not adequate enough a description
What I can,
for us to be able to get
what I think
you
what
know,
I,
apply for a grant.
what seems obvious is that I should call the COG and bring
Yeah.
this up to them and
Yeah.
say,
We're in a
or
pickle.
talk to the mayor first and
Yeah.
see, you know, but then if, you know, she's okay with that, talk to the COG and say, you know, what do we do? Like,
Right.
could they do, I feel like they're better able to like
can you
do
do for it?
research,
Yeah,
to
what
look
kind of
at.
Thing is there.
Do you think we could actually have your network? Do you think we could actually get funding through the deep thing with this level of project? Has
Yeah.
that happened to people? That's like a kind of research
But,
thing
yeah.
that a COG I would think would be good at, right?
We have municipalities come to us all the time. We have this issue. How can you help us? You know, I mean, that's the whole idea of the COG. You know, you're there to work for all these municipalities, and when they have a problem, they should be able to come to you and you help them figure out. That's the way we operate. I don't know how.
And I don't know,
New York.
Naugatuck Valley COG.
Okay.
and I don't know also if it's like, it's such a different setup from a lot of them in the state, or at least the more urbanized ones, because, you know, Torrington has staff and engineers and all these other communities don't have any of that stuff. And so maybe the COG is more focused on serving communities that don't have any staff.
Yeah, but the thing is that, I mean, they're kind of responsible to us regardless, right?
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Naugatuck Valley has a variety of, we have Waterbury and Watertown, they have staff for all these things, but we also have like Bethlehem
Falls.
and Beacon Falls, and all these other, yeah.
I just,
yeah, so that's true.
yeah, that we need to, I don't see, I mean, we have local flooding, if local flooding is part of the hazard mitigation study or whatever, that
Do you want me
we
to,
need to,
do you want me
we need
to kind
confirm.
of put together like who I would send the pamphlet to? And I mean,
I think that that's
that could be a
that's
first step.
a
one.
first step,
So
but I
we're
think
waiting for
another
it.
step needs to be communication with the COG, our COG, and possibly where would the funding's coming from?
See, cause I
DEP or
didn't handle all
DEP?
that, so I can find out.
But yeah, I mean,
But
I
I
guess
have
the
the
thing is we
mitigation
need to
plan.
know,
That'd be great.
we need to know like what level of specificity they need in that hazard mitigation plan.
For deep, like what deep specificity they need.
A few other observations, we have other parts of town, our town that did not flood, so, of course, you know, every neighborhood different planning process, so, just observing Marjorie Street, Redwood Avenue, they have the Troy Brook going area. Now, they have a very deep stream in there and bridges over. I don't think they. The west side.
There hasn't been a lot of flooding in the north end.
No, but is it because they're dug out and they have like granite wall?
Well, there's the Army Corps project, which has been
That's huge
dredged.
channel, yeah.
That is engineered to be deep to hold capacity and
Right,
keep it
but
from.
we're talking, you know, like in the north end, there's
Yeah,
a number of streams that are running through the north end that weren't really part of the, I don't think
right,
they were part of the Army Corps project. They're pretty narrow, but they're deep.
like Brookside or like
No,
Brook Street,
think,
I mean?
Marjorie Street, Calhoun Street, Pythian out, like there's
Yeah.
streams that
Like
run
these
all
ones,
through
yeah.
the north end.
Yeah,
So
sorry, these don't have-
everything between Main Street and Brightwood Avenue,
Yeah, I know, there's
There's
obviously the
tons of
Naugatuck.
little tributaries that are
There's
running through
there's
people's
one.
yards. Or I guess I should say, there are tons of yards that have the river running through.
I can't tell if it's, my observation, there were no problems in this.
No, there were, I mean, I'm in that
I-
neighborhood, there wasn't really any flooding.
There's
What-
one person I deal that has had some flooding issues, but that I just went out on because they called our office. But like I said, it's you know, I think it's hard to make these assessments without having a comprehensive assessment of the
Mhm.
entire community, because like a one-off here and a one-off there, it's like
It is kind of true,
maybe
yeah.
there's places where people are so disenfranchised that they don't even think
They
to
don't
complain
think-
about
yeah.
it. Like it's much worse.
Necessarily assume that Goshen or Litchfield or all these other towns in the COG wouldn't have some potential problem areas. I mean, all it is, could be
Oh,
a
yeah.
culvert under the road is undersized, or, you know, they've gotta have plenty of roads where that's the situation, so.
So
It wasn't there, in the news maybe a month ago, some town out in the east of Connecticut, a couple bridges washed out and these people were like, they couldn't
Right.
function, or they had to bring in some temporary residents, and it was some rural community. So, I mean, I think the point is, I think, you know, if they could do a hazard mitigation plan similar to NDCOG did for each community, I would guess that all the communities would encourage that and benefit from it, you know, if they requested that at a COG meeting. I'm just guessing. I
Right.
don't know.
And that's why I don't know about the funding, like, I don't know how that
Right,
works.
right.
Like,
I'm
if-
gonna find out what the funding mechanism
right.
headed up with it. We
I'm sure whether it's, I'm sorry, whether it's a pipe or a brook, they're only made to handle certain capacities of gallons per minute. So I'd imagine it's the 100-year situation, which was a lot less than what we have now, rainfall, and that might be a case where you might have to replace a lot of the sewer.
So, you know, there was we had the issue years ago where the entire East End was depositing sediment, all of the residential stuff. I guess not the entire East End. But it was depositing sediment into Bessie Pond, and so there was a huge channelization project that came down Winthrop Street. Remember when that first went in? Remember seeing it? It was huge. Tons of riprap. Yeah, so this, you know, we've been dealing with parts of it already. But I would agree that we need like you're talking like a citywide plan, not just
citywide
neighborhood level,
plan.
right?
Yeah,
a problem area,
You do with. Yeah, are you
So what was happening,
redirecting-
say that again?
Redirecting the water?
No, it wasn't redirecting it. So basically, it was slowing it down and creating you know, and using riprap to pull some of it. I'm assuming that the riprap is pulling some of it down into itself. So, you know, you have,
Well, the
there's that
riprap
big
is the
peninsula on
thing.
Bessie Pond that was not there before. So that entire section right here, that is sediment from the East End. And
Wow.
there's a pipe that goes under the parking lot, Oliver Wolcott. What used to be, well, I don't know what, it's that parking lot, it's in the other, it's across from Oliver Wolcott, that was their parking lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there was piping that went under that, and it just would shoot out all of this sediment into Bessie Pond, and this was, you know, this like, when Trout Unlimited was very active, this really bothered them, because Bessie Pond used to be deep enough to be fishable. And it was filling up with sediment from development. It's sort of like if you go up Winthrop Street, if you move the map up Winthrop Street. Yeah, so it's like that whole section right in there is just draining into that pond. So you can hardly see that it's there anymore, but there was a really large channel that was created to the right of Winthrop Street as you're going up the hill. And really big and deep and wide with lots and lots of riprap. And the point of it was to slow it down.
Is there fish? Is there still trout in there now? Or are you
No.
saying it's
It's
not?
too warm.
The whole thing is probably like 4 feet deep. They're actually,
It is, yeah.
the city's been dredging it for, they got permits.
They did get permits finally to dredge it?
From in the mountains.
Well, I remember that Army Corps wouldn't let us actually remove sediment. They let us remove like
Vegetation.
vegetation.
Yeah,
Yeah, there's sediment that's coming out of there.
I know,
There's
well, that,
big,
just
giant
thought that
piles.
was like,
Yeah,
Well, we do
Maybe.
need more parking space.
I'll revisit that permit. I thought it had sediment in it.
I don't know. I thought that we kept trying to get them to allow us to pull the sediment out. And they said, you know, they kept denying it. But I know that what? I have absolutely no idea.
The trench along your way, you're explaining that it slows it down, but there's an eventuality.
Well, I mean, the riprap eventually clogs up and doesn't work anymore. What happens with that? I never,
I'm not familiar with that, like just having riprap below. I would think they would.
I mean,
just
there were
have
other things
piping,
that
like
happened higher up. I know that what's happening down Winthrop Street was this,
I'm just not
I
familiar at
mean,
all.
it
with
was
yeah.
huge. I remember being shocked when I saw the size of it.
Slopes and things so that you don't have as much of that runoff. collecting sediment.
I don't even see where it was in
Like you
this
said,
though,
oh.
like I'm like trying to figure out where even. I see lawns, you mean it's in the right of way?
Okay, so where are you?
These are,
Where
this
Winthrop
is the
Street
high
used to
school.
go.
Okay, so start working your way up Winthrop Street. Isn't it up Winthrop? Maybe I'm wrong, maybe it was, am I wrong? Hold on, now I gotta go drive it and find it.
It's off the side of,
Keep going up the hill.
Yeah, I think it's Charles.
Maybe it's, oh God, I don't know, I can't see it from the aerial view.
Yeah, I know. This is more recent.
I'll drive up it and
Like
make
them
note of
putting the
exactly where
sidewalk-
it is, but, you know, I was like, I've been noticing that the riprap is all, covered now. So I don't know if it's still doing what it was supposed to do. And I know we were supposed to, that's why Jay was asking about it during the, were you here? I don't know if you were here when the school was being,
No, I started right after the school.
okay, so when the school was being approved, because part of our goal was to fix the pipes that were going under the parking lot at Oliver Wolcott. So we were hoping at future development that would be addressed. And, it was forgotten about, was not addressed. But Jay was asking if they were planning on doing anything with that. And I'm like, nope.
This is the cool thing I wanted to.
Oh,
talk
that
about.
is neat.
Yeah, the high school is really humming along. It's huge.
Have you been in it?
No. I've done wetlands walk
Okay,
before.
all right.
So yeah, so I'll put together kind of a plan for the pamphlets. I'll, what shows up as places to highlight and have this resource. Other communities actually, interestingly enough, have contacted me and been like, I love your pamphlet. Can you use it?
Yeah, you had sent one of them
Um,
to me.
Yeah.
'Cause
Oh, yeah.
They were looking for the
Yeah.
history on it and who
Yeah,
did
like
it.
Reading or somewhere down there.
Yeah,
I'll find out what funding do this,
Okay.
wide. But it wasn't, like I said, it was each individual town had a separate plan. It was just the COG managed it, so it was COG wide.
Jeremy really, like in our long-term planning, we have a hazard mitigation plan for the city he really wants to do. So I know he's very supportive of it. I mean,
Kind of surprised.
feel free to
It's just all a
review the
matter of
COG one. It does provide
funding.
information. It's just very concise.
okay. So moving on to schedule the HVA wildlife crossing assessment training.
At the last meeting, everyone was asking about, if there was a good time to do it, or if that works well for HVA, and if it could be a larger event that we have, like the high schools or other people get involved for the training.
Mhm.
And I got a yes and yes on that. So.
Okay.
Yes on, it could be a larger event and anytime. Really no.
Anytime?
She didn't give me any hints as to what she would
What
prefer,
would be good?
just whatever.
So
works for
what
us.
works for us? And when are we thinking? Are we thinking this year or in the spring?
I thought would be something that can't be snow dayed out,
Okay. So spring,
and it's hard to get on the sides of the roads and stuff if there's huge snow banks.
okay.
Getting people out there safely might be challenging.
So are we looking at March?
March.
I mean, you could get snowed out in March too, but
Yeah.
not much less likely lately.
Weekend, weekday, I don't know I don't know if she can do weekends, but if we have students, it's gonna be.
Oh, it has to be weekend. I
Yeah,
can
she-
do Sundays better than Saturdays. I don't have much availability.
I
on
mean,
Saturdays.
we might wanna even consider April, May. If she recommends, like, there's certain animals that are breeding at certain times, cause it might make it easier to see those.
Yeah, no, that's a
migratory
good point.
paths.
Okay.
She might be able to weigh in on that.
Yeah, I,
But she was talking about how sometimes it crosses over roads and stuff like that.
yeah, I like that idea, because April is salamander crossing season.
Okay.
So that's like we'd be able to hear
Yeah.
breeding frogs and
Right,
maybe
right.
see dead salamanders on the road or something like that. March is a little early.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So weekends, hopefully she could do that,
I mean, at this point, I don't have anything,
except for the Earth Day cleanup.
right, scheduled. Which is actually on the 20th this year.
Birthday cleanup on point.
Yeah, it's actually on Earth Day, right? Isn't Earth Day?
It's a Saturday of,
It's always
yeah,
a Saturday or?
well, no,
I always thought it was just the 20th and then our cleanup was always a Saturday.
well, I
closest
don't
to that.
really know, I just, yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's the 22nd.
Earth Day is the 22nd? Oh, I do too. Okay,
So it
so our
doesn't
Earth Day would
matter.
be the 20th.
Oh, yours is 20th?
I think so, most likely. Our cleanup? I don't see it,
Do we know where that's gonna be yet, or?
usually at Co Park.
So we do the same location every year.
We don't,
That one, yeah.
for the, yeah, for where we meet people and send them on their assignments. They go all over the place, but,
Yeah, the one that we did this year is kind of not unusual, but
and that was clean up the world or world
Mm.
cleanup.
right, the
Yeah.
Earth Day ones, everyone comes to a central location, we have a bunch of maps.
And then we
Say,
send
I
them
live
off.
on the north end, and we say,
Here,
these
do
are
this
some
area.
spots.
Yeah,
and
okay.
I
Or
live
we
on-
have a group of kids and we're like, do this park.
Right, exactly, so. It's a big fun thing, a lot of people show up. Okay, so I'll reach out to her again, maybe for a weekend, to see what she's got, and she can propose something, and then we can go to it.
Yeah.
Once we get a date, we can start planning. Should we, this kind of goes with the Earth Day cleanup planning item, but I was thinking, like, we talked about engaging the high schoolers.
Yep.
And at the Earth Day, at the World Day, we met, they a chair, or were like
They
the
were part of, I think, the
Environmental
environmental club.
I printed this out. I don't know if you remember their name.
Is that the sign up for the people over there?
Yeah.
I mean, I ended up,
Oh,
did I got some kind
there
of,
was someone there, with their dad. So they would
yeah,
probably have maybe they would have the same last name.
Did you see a article anywhere?
They had a reporter there.
He was taking pictures. The trail.
They didn't make the cut. I know, yeah, I thought that we'd get something. None of those names
Does it
are
look
ringing a
it?
bell.
Looks like Easter.
maybe it's the Lucas Burwood,
Burwood.
maybe, but hold on, I think I took notes on. Then,
On who that was.
I think so.
No,
Hold on,
I didn't
let's just
talk to them
see.
as much as you did.
See. Okay. This is what I have. The environmental club at THS, Mr. Cahill, the math teacher, and Ms. Sullivan, the STEM coach, Lindsay Sullivan and Cahill. And I have their email addresses.
Oh, cool.
So J Cahill, CAHILL at torrington.org,
Wait, Jay, what?
JCAHILL at torrington.org. And L,
Not Torrington CT, just Torrington.
just says torrington.org, but that, I could be wrong.
A school district is sure is different than us.
And then L Sullivan with 2 L's at torrington.org. So Lindsay Sullivan, she's the STEM coach, and Mr. Cahill, don't have a first name, the math teacher, and they are the advisors for the environmental club at THS, which I think is a great in to have.
So I could reach out to them and
Yeah.
just introduce ourselves as the commission and
Yeah.
say, we'd love members at large, we'd love to have people come and just
Yep.
have a conversation or watch or whatever.
And then you can tell them about the 2 projects in terms of the what's this other,
The
the
wildlife
forest, yeah.
one is really, kind of a cool, very interesting.
Yeah, and, then I mean, actually, I would clue them in on the wildlife crossing assessment, the Earth Day cleanup stuff, and community service, and then maybe the food forest. So this is, this was for these, core forests, right? That's what we're talking about. So there's, a core forest assessment, so core forest is like, what, 200, had to be
200 acres, I think.
200 acres. And identifying where there are core forests within, the landscape, and whether they connect or where possible connection points are between one core forest and another core forest, because those core forests are, pathways for wildlife to move. And so there is this whole, region-wide assessment taking place for a particular core forest. And it's, by the time you're in Torrington, it's a little bit sparse, but there were how many? 20?
Maybe 10?
I don't remember how many
Around
sites there
10.
were. I can't remember how many possible crossing sites there were.
Yeah, 10, yeah,
10,
around
okay.
that.
So they train you to assess them. So they try to recruit locals to do part of the inventory and assessment of it.
It'd be really cool, fun, because you will probably see evidence of wildlife and, can talk about.
I thought there was some really interesting points, like, so she was talking about, like frog mating season, frog crossings of roadways, and, yeah, and, finding out where these crossings are, and actually having, what was she say, like, where there were people out there, like, kind of stopping, cars from crushing the, yeah, but also, like, the other thing I thought was interesting was like the increase in roadkill when the time change happens for us. Because the animals adapt to our schedule, but they don't know about our clocks, so they end up getting killed when we switch times and they're not switching their time. Takes them a while to adapt to us. Just things like that. Yep.
Wasn't it coming to an end?
I'm hoping.
I thought I
I
heard that,
keep
but I don't
hoping.
know. I think it might have only passed the House.
Oh, like, oh, no, we can't do this in these.
I think it partially passed, like the House or the Senate passed it, but there's like not really.
All of China is at the same time zone. They don't even have zones. Yeah, they don't switch anything. Like, that entire enormous country's on that. I was like, wait, what?
So when you move from Eastern China to Western China, your
It's a
whole life is like.
Yep, you're living in the
different.
dark. Yeah. Okay, so let's see, let's move on. I gotta figure out where my thing is. Okay. So Earth Day cleanup planning, or were we already on that?
That's kind of what we did. I
We
mean,
did
I
that.
just say we reach out to the high
Okay.
school if we don't want to plan
That's good.
anymore, I think. Got a
That's
lot.
fine. And then food forest planning update. Is there any update?
We
Well, on the
mostly a
sidewalk,
food
yeah.
forest site walk that we did. It was really fun. We walked from Talbot Senior Center to almost Toro Park. And there was two sites. One of them was really just an open space property, two open space properties, and then the other one was actually a potential food forest site. The one that was the food forest site, right next to the trail, the Naugatuck River Greenway Trail, that we thought there could be a potential possibility there. I'll bring it up. Since then, I kind of had discussions. I thought it was good shooting things down. Had discussions with the city engineer, and because, so this is it right here. It's just this little sliver. And we kind of hypothesized, or Steve said he'd seen activity here when they were maintaining the Army Corps project here, that the engineering or public works uses this to get in to the projects. We wouldn't be able to do anything to impede that. And there's this row of trees. So this is north, this is south, So these trees are
To be
always
shaded,
casting
yeah.
shadows in this direction generally, or when the sun angle is lower. So it's kind of a shady spot unless you're out
Right
here,
there, yeah.
which we thought
That
could
was
be a
like the
fit.
one little sweet spot.
The thing is that I guess they use this all the time for staging construction equipment.
okay.
It's like their staging
Okay.
spot.
For what construction?
Well, for maintaining the Army Corps project, the city is under contract with Army Corps to do all the cutting, and anytime that there's like culvert replacement or equipment storage in this general area of town,
That's
they
where it
use
is.
this. Put it
It's like
there.
a common.
Yeah, just kind of
layout
a,
area.
it's like an extension of the right of way. They can
It's
park
been torn
stuff
up
and,
for years. It's over.
Right, right, right.
yeah, so
Right.
I think that's kind of not a great.
No, that one is
location.
a next. It's been
Yeah.
next.
The
All
other,
right.
so this is our path. We went out here and then we backtracked. This trail is now, there it is. So this is the new trail. See what it used to look like. Just the road. They turned it from a two-way into a one-way. And this is the rail trail. And they've again, delineators, thank you, that are kind of, see them right there. So the other site we looked at was on Prospect. Or not Prospect, but it's this road here, Park Ave. These two sites are owned by the city. These people have kind of turned their yard into it. None of it is kind of major, it's mostly just gardens and planted vegetation. So, no, I noted it in the report for this, that it's kind of like, seems like it'd be a minor violation because there's no structures on it, it's just kind of garden stuff and planted
Some
trees.
chairs.
So anyway, there's that property, and then this one, we were kind of looking at this area potentially for a food forest thing.
Same issue with shade though, right?
Same issue with shade, and look, this is where the property is. Most of it
Yeah,
is up here that we were looking at.
Yep.
So it's kind of not ideal. You have to cross over this guardrail to even get to it. It's not really gonna be noticeable. But they were cool sites, really pretty there. This was,
that was where there was that nice waterfall, right? Oh, yeah.
yep,
Yep.
waterfall is like back here, I think. There. So this is all kind of part of, after the flood of 55, there's a lot of property that was just like taken by the city because it was destroyed. Like this, look at this is definitely a house lot.
Mhm.
And they took it and then they built berms. There's one of many berms that's built around rivers here to just channelize the water and hold it in here, because it probably just destroyed this house, and this
Mhm.
house probably got pretty badly beat up as well. So we did look at those and I made an assessment of them. That's all we did on that inspection. For this food forest. We don't have a good site still.
Yep.
I was able to reach out to park and I had a meeting in person with the park director. He was right there.
No,
I shook his hand.
Yeah.
I said, we need to meet. And then he said, oh, that's great. I'd love to. Like, we're definitely talking about this.
Oh,
Send
good.
an email to me and Tim Cody, who's the streets, the public works director.
Oh, so he's interested.
Yeah,
Okay, cool.
nothing.
Oh.
Radio silence from them. I sent them a couple emails. So it's like, do I have to go up to his office? But even then,
Make us handy.
like, if he doesn't want it bad enough, I
Mhm.
can't, like,
Right,
I can't make him prioritize a
right.
field visit, because we really need to go out to these sites and look. My one end goal that I have, I went to all the parks we had been looking at, which are Borzini, Bannon Street, and East Pearl. Or Pearl, I don't know. And the one on Borzini, this park right here off of Jackson, this is Jackson here, and French is here. There's this garden here, and it's run by the UConn Master Gardeners class. Maybe I can approach the Master Gardeners and say, like,
Yeah.
does he talk to you? Can we get in on this? Can you just do an expansion of what you're already doing where you plant?
That's a good idea.
It's kind of, there's not a lot of great, obviously they're gonna have a problem. They're gonna want to keep this open. This area here could be okay though, like near the garden, they get a lot of light, right? This is south and
Yep.
they put the garden there, so it's at least reasonable, and there was stuff growing in it. There's all walnut trees growing along the side here, so we probably don't want to plant under those.
No,
But it's also, we could point and say, edible.
Look,
Who's actually gonna eat those? But
they're really
Um,
hard to crack into.
like,
You basically have to saw them apart.
yeah, but anyway, so I'm gonna try following up with Master Gardeners.
But you could be like natural dye, word it included.
Well, we
I
can
mean,
have a
black
whole,
walnut is kind of,
there
is
could be a
pretty
whole
cool.
like educational
Yeah.
program down the road when things are established with the Master Gardeners and like just walking around and what you can eat
Some
here and.
Oh, yeah.
That's
okay.
Hickory, that's, street. Well, parking was a lot of
Like
work to
to
get
go
things
see
on Hickory.
which
Street.
Like this is
Shell is on
Yeah.
those, right?
Litchfield Street,
Like, it's like wood.
right here.
My
So
dad would
Litchfield
take 'em in
Street's here,
in
the
his
school
shop
is
when
here.
they'd Slice them with a laser.
Albert Street's here, High Street's here. And then, so it's back kind of right before the hospital. Hospital's here and it's right over here. So it would be great, maybe the hospital, but again, if we can't get the
Right,
parks, we
right.
can't,
Why's the master gardener?
that's what I would ask them.
That's interesting.
Well, they got in there somehow. The other place that has a garden was, Pearl Street. Donahue Park,
Hmm.
this thing right here, but there was no sign. So, and it's pretty shady in there,
Hmm.
but still, they're able to grow something here.
What is that right there?
What? It's a garden.
That's a garden?
Can't you tell? It's
I
valid.
mean, I can tell it's something.
It's valid, look,
Okay, but
Look.
who's running that garden?
there's no sign, so.
Oh, we don't know who's running.
Yeah, the
Okay, I
master
see, I
gardener
see.
had like an
I was
actual like
confused. I was confused.
QR code and like, we're the
Oh, cool.
master gardeners, like, contact us. So I thought that that's what I would do. So anyway, that's my next step, because I had to have some
Okay.
next step, because it's,
Okay.
we've kind of been chasing our tail.
Yeah,
An interesting point was, we discussed this on our talk, was the folks that work in the health district office and park that's there, go back there and have a lunch picnic. So they could be kind of, and we were always thinking residential people would be painting a garden.
Right.
We have,
Yeah.
I set up a little garden in the back. Have you seen it?
Oh, is that, so that is
Yeah.
Lark's garden?
Yeah.
So we just figured it out.
oh, it's large.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lark's. There we go. That's why having you here is good.
Mm-hmm.
Lark.
yeah, they love that park.
I know, I've seen people from ONG walking back there too.
Okay, so let's go to the next thing, which is Red Mountain Trail Grant update.
I don't remember what I reported last time. We had our kind of kickoff meeting with our internal folks, and I'm waiting to hear back
Okay,
from SLR, which is our kind of retained consulting firm for this type of engineering work. And we don't need to go through a public bid process for the state grant. We can kind of just, we've already done that process and they've acknowledged that. So all we have to do is work with them, which is really, really nice.
oh, okay, next, open space inventory.
Well, a question on that, was the road, rotary intersection in McDermott, is that part of the grant?
No, that was funding from CROG, the Capital Region COG. They had some transportation. Did you do any of that? Tap into any of that money? I don't know if that's the type of transportation projects that you do engineering stuff, not the planning. This is like tactical urbanism money. So like what, Waterbury did
Waterbury
something?
did one,
Yeah,
yeah,
it's like-
Grand Street, right in front of the post office. It
Except,
was gonna be a bigger thing and then it ended up just being a little thing, but, Bristol
Yeah.
did something.
yeah, so it really involves putting up just delineators and paint instead of redoing an intersection, and that's
Well,
what
you
they.
kind of try it out to
Right.
see how effective it might be and how people like it before you go forward with a full, you know,
Right,
full.
Because it's temporary paint and
Permanent stuff.
temporary
Yeah,
delineators.
well, it's interesting driving through there. Right?
What do
I'm
you
not sure
think?
if it makes it, you know, me, I can see how it kind of slows down the traffic, makes it easier to cross. It's
Farley,
on
McDermott.
the kitty corner. road.
Oh, I
Right,
know,
that's-
yeah, I think I saw.
If you're used to going in that intersection, it's like this giant intersection. You
Yeah.
get there and you're,
So
everyone's
much
kind of
pavement.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
who goes next?
Everybody just creeps through it.
This, I think, has
Like,
like a.
not real
like a-
stops.
What do they call those? Slide lane or whatever, like a slip lane, and then it gets to a T and it's all tightened, so there's a lot more space for pedestrians to move to the other side of the road
Yeah.
and to Red Mountain and to the trail.
Is that part of the thing, do we want to direct people from the trail to cross?
So the
street?
redesign of that whole area is match for the grant. But, or the implementation of that, of that new area is match for the state grant. The kind of trying it out, that was just free money that we just grabbed, and that's gonna be what they're hoping to do if it works out well, if they,
Usually you get a lot of pushback. Maintenance of.
right, right, so that's, so, well, it's only gonna be up for a little while. There was also supposed to be paint as a part of it. The smart person I was like, oh, well, we have the Red Mountain Trail, should be like a red theme. And they said, yeah, sure.
Yeah,
And,
it's red
and,
there.
and traffic and engineering was like, red, that's gonna look horrible, and they just didn't paint it. So,
I see it's colored in.
oh, did they color it in?
Yeah,
Did they color it in red?
I think that-
Oh, they did put, oh, so maybe they didn't install it. They were giving me crap for it, but maybe they were just hassling me. But it is red now. I'll have to go through it.
I thought so, yeah.
Does it look good or does it look weird red?
No, it's for that.
Okay.
Why not a red ray? I look at that, maybe
It's just, it's so small and
it's just
I,
not enough traffic.
I don't know.
It's kind
yeah.
of weird to come out of.
Open space inventory, should we,
Do a date.
we do something tentative for November? So Wednesday's working relatively well for people? Okay. So the only Wednesday I have is the 22nd of November.
Oh, that's good. 22nd, so that's the Wednesday before,
Thanksgiving.
the
yeah,
day
it's
before
the day
Thanksgiving.
before.
I could probably do it.
Hey, you wanna give it a try?
I'm fine with it.
I think I'm going up. to- Not bringing my son home, I'm gonna go up there and have Thanksgiving, so I think I'm going up on, actually Thanksgiving morning, I'm gonna drive up, so.
So for now, nine, or do we not have to do it that early now, or
Can we make it a little later that day?
10?
10 is good for
Well,
me.
the only thing is like, cause I take.
Oh, so
but
the
of course I
earlier
got the
better.
Last one. and then-
You're gonna still be at work, so
Yeah,
you guys, I could do either.
I mean, what I might be able to do is work from home that day and then do some work at home and then meet up with you. I could probably work,
So 10 is okay?
yeah.
Okay.
Just for that.
I'll come up with, some locations. Maybe we'll do that for our river ramble from, Stillwater Pond. There's a big piece of
Okay.
municipal land that's south of, where, where the dam is at Stillwater, or overflows up there.
Yep.
Follow Naugatuck all the way down there that way, so it'd be kind of a nice little jaunt along there. But we'll see. I'll find something. Yeah, and I have nothing new with natural resource inventory, as I never,
Okay.
as I never.
Well, conservation. All right, so what's this?
You received that in the mail.
Okay. Do I have to do anything about it?
No, it's a notification of siting council process for solar development. It's a landfill project that the city's been working on. Steve, you're familiar with that one, right? With the city and the landfill and the solar project?
Yes.
So this is just a notification of that process starting. Now we get to actually do it again.
Full hard copy of the plans, towns of so requested. So are we getting our full hard copy?
Yeah, we'll get materials and just find a fix starting. And then we got this as well, so people. If you want to start with that, that's addressed to you. It's from the Land Conservation Council, which is the umbrella organization for our land trust.
Okay.
You met already.
Survey. All right, so we just need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
And, you know, the date. November 9th, 6:30.